Welcome to the HR Chat Show, one of the world's most downloaded and shared podcasts designed for HR pros, talent execs, tech enthusiasts, and business leaders. For hundreds more episodes and what's new in the world of work, subscribe to the show, follow us on social media, and visit hrgazette.com.
Welcome to another episode of the HR Chat Show. Hello listeners, this is your host today, Bill Banham, and joining me in this episode is Kirsten Ironson, Vice President of People and Culture over at Community Savings Credit Union. Kirsten says she is privileged that her work also speaks to her personal passions, understanding what makes humans tick, getting deep and meaningful about mental wellness, and creating an environment that other people want to be a part of. Kirsten began her career at Community Savings, building their learning initiative, Community Savings University, and has recently been recognised by BC Business for delivering an award-winning wellness programme. Hey Kirsten, how are you doing? Welcome to the show today.
Hi Bill, I'm very good, thank you. I'm calling from British Columbia, so it's exciting to hear another Brit.
Yes, both proud Canadians, but as you can tell, neither of us were born there. Why don't you fill our listeners in? Why don't you take a couple of minutes and tell them a bit about yourself, your background, how you ended up moving over to BC, all about your career. Go ahead.
I'm currently obviously working in an HR role, but that wasn't my background. I didn't come from a kind of traditional HR or come in through a traditional HR route. After university, I spent some time wanting to do good, joining a charity and doing a bit of fundraising. And then I actually went into the world of sales, something that I never wanted to do, never thought I would do, but something that I actually really enjoyed. And I'd say I enjoyed it because of the company, the organisation that I was a part of. I really felt like we were kind of the centre of the universe. I worked for Mars, the confectionery company, and the culture there was so good that I just absolutely loved it. But I worked too hard, and I thought, right, I need to move country. I'll probably never leave the organisation. Otherwise, I'm going to do something really extreme. I'm going to move country. And then I thought, right, I'm actually not going to have a career. I'm going to have a job. So I did that for a couple of years. I had what I'd call a job where I was able to do other things like sports in my free time, a bit of volunteering work as well. And then I found myself back in a career, and that was one here at Community Savings. So I was able to draw on what I'd done in learning and development, and then that kind of escalated, snowballed into the role that I have here today. And it's another organisation where the culture is key to my work, and to the people that work at the organisation, and that was always very exciting for me, and still is today.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the HR Chat Podcast. If you enjoy the audio content we produce, you'll love our articles on the HR Gazette. Learn more at hrgazette.com. And now, back to the show.
Very good. So you moved over to Canada about 13 years ago, I think you mentioned.
Yes.
My next question for you then is, why is Canada the best country in the world? Go.
Because it will never be the 51st state or started off political. I'm also, a proud Brit, and I also really enjoyed my life there as well. But Canada is a beautiful country. Um, it's a very safe feeling place to be in so many regards. I can walk around at night and, well, I may feel like I'll be attacked by bears because they genuinely do roam the neighborhood, but from a human perspective, it does feel like a very safe place to be, a beautiful place to bring up kids. You've got, nature is your playground in your backyard. We're, up the road, we've got mountains, local mountains that I can access, and we can access to go night skiing. And then not too far down the road is some stunning beaches that we can paddle in as well. So, yeah, really is nature's playground out here. It's a beautiful part of the world.
I love obviously so much. You and I were chatting before we hit record today. I was telling you that I was that close to moving there a few years ago, and then life happened and things changed. I enjoy camping and hiking and whatnot. My idea of camping in British Columbia is sleeping in a car, though, because of those bears that you mentioned. I'm too much of a scaredy Brit to actually sleeping in a tent.
I have been laughed at for sleeping in a tent with a can of bear spray. Laughed at, ridiculed by Canadians, but I've done it and I would do it again.
You gotta stay safe. Okay, so we are living in pretty scary times, pretty tumultuous times. There's lots going on. We are recording this episode in early April, and it seems like everything's going a bit crazy. The markets seem to be crashing, lots of uncertainty happening. And as part of my homework ahead of our conversation today, I was going over your LinkedIn profile and looking at some of your recent LinkedIn posts. And in one of them, you wrote the following: a unifying social purpose coupled with strong leadership offers an effective antidote to the anxiety experienced by a workforce amid political and economic instability. I find it fascinating how leaders can inspire calm and galvanize action simply by understanding the science behind how their words impact others. Firstly, can I say that you are a wordsmith? Secondly, my question is, what did you mean by that? And what role does leadership play in addressing geopolitical tensions?
Yeah, it's such an interesting time to be in leadership. It's an interesting time to be in the world, and at times it can be a very scary one. And as leaders, we need to recognize that we feel that, and our teams are certainly going to feel that as well. So let's not ignore it. Ignoring it's not going to make it go away. We know all the research shows that society skyrockets in time of political tension, like like just in the lead up to the elections, and that we also know impacts productivity and the way people feel and operate. Let's not ignore it. Let's face into it, because let's be honest, everyone's a little bit frightened or is in the kind of doom scrolling mode of looking at what's happening next, what's going to impact us next, and it can be scary. It really can be. So I would say, firstly, leaders need to be socio-politically astute. So you really need to have a good grasp on what's going on in the world and constantly look at it with a lens on how is that going to impact our teams. You need to address your teams, address them in a way that lets your team know we get the concern as well, but we're not worried. We've been through tumultuous times before, we've handled it before, we're going to do it again. So that's the first thing, actually talking about it, addressing it with the team so we understand that, and and reference things that you've been through before. You've there's no doubt that everyone's gone through some really difficult stuff in their personal lives, in their work life, and just kind of draw on that to give people that sense of, yeah, you're right, we have been through things that felt hugely scary before, and we're okay. We came through just fine. So it's that acknowledgement, and then also tangible decision making. So you want a leadership team to act quickly, not erratically, but you want to see them galvanize quickly when you've got a problem on the table. So um, I'm going to quickly hop back to the pandemic, but we knew that anxiety rose throughout our team, and globally through society. We had this kind of collective anxiety there. And for us, that was a really good opportunity for us to talk about our benefits. So that sounds very boring, but actually it's not at all. So we have really decent mental health benefits, up to $2,000 a year to spend on mental health professionals. And it's all very well having that. And we know lots of organisations don't want people to tap into that too much because your premiums go up. Well, we wanted our premiums to go up because we knew ultimately that would benefit us and our team. So we brought in some registered clinical counsellors. We brought in a few different ones actually to give people a sense of, okay, these are the different kind of humans that I may be interacting with. And saying you don't just have to use them in times of what you might consider crisis. You can use them to talk about things that are bugging you. It can be your inability to manage your time, but use those benefits that you've got you've got someone there to speak to that can support you without judgment. It's not embarrassing to use them. In fact, we would really, really like that you used them. And for us, we saw a 73% increase in the usage of our mental health coverage during that time. We also had people talking about how enabled they felt to use them, so how empowered they felt to use them. And we had someone talking about trauma that had happened to them in their childhood and how it had resurfaced because of something that happened, politically for her. And she actually had to take, oh, I've said she won't mind, she had to take an extended period of time off to look after her mental health. And she came back and talked to the whole organisation about it and said that she felt very supported by our team in doing that. And for us, that's so meaningful. And that builds confidence in the rest of the team to also use those benefits. So it's those kind of tangible leadership actions that I believe give your team the confidence that we know what we're doing, that we know we'll be okay, and that they're going to be supported by us.
This episode of the HR Chat podcast is supported by Nebula Academy, a technology industry-focused workforce accelerator that offers learning programs to prepare individuals for successful careers. Our approach is centered around cognitive neuroscience research, combining the latest research and modern learning methods to create informative and psychologically safe learning experiences. Our programs enable individuals to achieve career readiness and immediate impact in their chosen field. Moreover, we help businesses create positive learning experiences, increase productivity, enhance team performance, and build upskilling resources to meet the needs of today's modern workplace. Learn more at nebulaacademy.com. Thanks, and now back to the HR Chat Show.
So this is a podcast for HR people. I generally try and keep away from sharing my political views on this pod. Sometimes I'm very tempted. There's been the odd comment from me where I just want to scream certain things, but that's not my job. I'm picking up from you that you've got certain views. Follow-up question for you. Is it okay for leaders to share political views in the workplace sometimes?
Oh, I love that question so much, Bill. I think yes, but it does depend contextually on your organisation. I wouldn't choose to work for an organisation whose values I didn't believe in. I mean, that feels like it goes without saying, but that's so important to us. It's important in the way that we recruit, and actually it's been a game changer in the way that we recruit. So in our job postings, and if you go and have a look on any of ours here at Community Savings, we'll always talk about our social purpose. We exist to unite working people to build a just world. And we used to say, we've changed it actually, but we used to say, if this speaks to you at a core level, read on. And what we're saying is, and if it doesn't, then this is not the place for you. And by doing that, we've attracted people whose values do align with ours. So all that to say, yes, once you do that, you've got the go ahead to make political like statements, because you've already announced who you are and where you stand. And we are heavily affiliated with the Labour movement over here. We're the largest fully unionised credit union, so we're kind of political by nature. There are obviously some matters that we will have very strong opinions about as individuals that we may be more tactful about in the workplace, but we absolutely are not afraid of making political statements. So actually something that we're doing at the moment, we're renovating one of our branches. We're a credit union and one of our branches needs an overhaul. And we very quickly integrated into our spec that we're going to be prioritising Canadian workers, companies and Canadian products in the use of the building work that we'll be doing. So our CEO recently talked about that. In fact, on Friday, he talked about that and said, we've got a Buy Canadian mandate. The board support it, and this is the way forward. And you can hear a virtual cheer from the team who really stand behind that as well. So, where appropriate, and if it aligns with the values of your organisation, absolutely be political. Something we've got coming up this week is a DEI workshop, and we're closing all our branches down, and we're bringing all our teams together for a day to come in person and do this DEI workshop, which really, shows our commitment to it. Even though we have no burning fires internally on that topic, we still know that there's always work to be done there, and the education on that is just so important. Um, Before I had actually, finalized all the details, there was a lot of talk of other big institutions and banking institutions who were retracting their DEI initiatives. And so I was like, right, I do feel so compelled to make a statement about this. So I did put a simple message on our internal kind of communication platform saying, we have, whilst other organisations are retreating from DEI practices, just so you know, we've got a DEI workshop coming up. And lots of our team referenced that, and there were lots of thumbs up and some really positive comments around that, and it felt like the right thing to do at the time. It was quite an emotional response for me, but it got a good emotional response from our team. And as leaders, we are here to evoke or control emotional responses. Control not in a kind of big brother way, but in a calming way. And you kind of referenced what I'd talked about there on LinkedIn, and I wrote a bit of an article about it, because there really is a science and a biology behind what we do as leaders. So when we're speaking to a team, we can invoke panic, we can invoke fear, we can also invoke calm. We can calm people's amygdalas. And when we really break it down like that, I think it's good for leaders to do that. Okay, what is going to calm our team? So yes, you can say the right things, and then you've got to back that up with tangible actions and maneuver into a plan that instills confidence and shows that we've got this as a team. We know what we're doing next.
Okay, let's talk a bit more about the DEI side of things for a moment. Just recently, actually, I recorded a bunch of conversations with some big hitters around the rollback. That's coming out soon, or maybe it's already out by the time this episode is released, listeners. So regular listeners of this show will know that I spend most of my time these days in the UK. The company's still based in beautiful Toronto, Canada. One thing that's interesting about being in the UK, they don't call it DEI, they call it EDI, and the E stands for equality in the UK. It doesn't stand for equity. Can you, let's play devil's advocate here. Can you give me your thoughts on why some people in North America have got an issue with that E, that equity? Why is that so polemic?
Oh, yeah, they do, don't they? I'm someone who actually gets a little bit frustrated by the semantics argument there. I think, ultimately we're all aiming for the same thing. We're all striving for the same thing. And I don't love to waste energy looking at the semantics. I like to spend my energy getting into action. I don't mind if you call it equity or if you want to refer to equality. I understand the difference between the two. I discuss it a lot, actually, with one of my sisters who specialises in EDI. I was telling you before, but she works for UN Women, and they do a lot of work around this. And maybe I'm not going to be that popular in saying this, but I don't think any of us should waste our time in worrying about which one is correct, but do the things that we all know are going to make the biggest difference to make people feel comfortable. We can be good people. Investing in EDI, DEI, however you want to call it, don't completely relabel it. It's something I would say. You don't want people to think you're embarrassed or don't agree with it. You're making a statement if you do that. But the most important thing is that we're educating, we're getting those conversations, and we're bringing psychological safety to the workplace. There's a real pragmatic element to EDI, DEI, as far as I'm concerned. And that is, for us here at the credit union, we serve so many different members who come from so many different cultures. So it just doesn't make sense to have a team that aren't diverse and reflective of the communities that we're serving. So in a way, things have been very easy for us. I mean, we got our act together in 1944, a group of working people who didn't like the way that big banks were treating them, and said, we're going to do this differently. We're going to look after working people. And so for me and for our team, it's been a no-brainer to employ people and recruit for people who really care about the communities that you serve. And so diversity becomes a very natural part of the equation there. So for us, I'd say it's not something that I'd say we've not been that intentional about it, but we have and we haven't. It's happened organically because of the values that we have, and because of our social purpose mandate and keeping that at the fore. That said, I still want to invest in it, and for a few reasons. I want to invest in DEI initiatives because it is the right thing to do. Right now, it is, we're making a political statement as well, but there's some foundational parts of EDI that I really feel that experts need to come in and educate us on, and I know there's going to be a lot that I learn as well. And those educators are going to care way more than I do about the semantics and the use of equity rather than equality. I'd say equity is a little bit more popular at the moment, and I totally understand why. But I think, either term used in the fashion that it was intended is looking to do the right thing.
Let's change tack now, although it's kind of related actually to what we were talking about before. And let's talk about trauma-informed workplaces, Kirsten, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
So very recently, I recorded a mini series with Dr. Bill Howard, who's based out of Ottawa, writes for the Globe and Mail. Lots of our Canadian listeners will be familiar with Dr. Bill, and that was focused on a new program that he had called Being Crisis Ready. In your opinion, why do trauma-informed workplaces matter, and how can companies implement meaningful mental health policies?
It matters because trauma is widespread. It's not something that just happens to a few people. And I think this is a preconceived notion that is being dispelled over time, but there's more work to be done there. So I'm going to throw a bit of a stat out there. So the National Institute of Mental Health found 60 to 70% of adults reported having experienced at least one traumatic event in their lives. And there's so much more data that you can have a look at, see that really trauma impacts more people than less. Many people may not know that they are impacted by trauma, but the research shows that it impacts most of us. So there's therefore a likelihood that a significant number of the people in our teams will be impacted as well. And if we don't acknowledge this and educate it, we risk re-traumatizing folks, losing trust within our workforce, and not having a psychologically safe workplace. And again, for those who think that's, warm and fluffy, there's also a very pragmatic reason to ensuring that your workplace is psychologically safe. It's that you're going to get less absenteeism, you're going to increase productivity, you'll also increase the pride and joy that people feel about coming to work. And a mandate I was given when I joined was you only have one job to do. It's to make people feel proud to come to work. And that's a really significant part of it. People feel proud, and I talked about that example before. Someone felt very proud to be part of a workplace where they knew that we do things like renaming sick days to wellness days or health days, so that people can use that for mental wellness, and it's not stigmatized. They don't have to come and tell us why they'll use it. When we did this, there were a few people who said, "Oh, people are going to abuse it." Honestly, a handful of people, and our CEO was like, "No, they're not. They never have done." We really trust our workforce, and 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 it's true. No one's abused it. The numbers haven't skyrocketed, but people will say, "I'm taking a health day," and feel really comfortable in doing so. And we've just had so much more dialogue around, people's mental health and how they're feeling, and people casually mentioning, that they're using therapists or talking about childhood trauma. So, yeah, for me, it's not just a nice, warm and fluffy thing to do. It really is a pragmatic, very sensible thing to do.
One of the silver linings from the pandemic was what you just explained there. People feel more comfortable now sharing their own mental health journeys, where they're at. I don't think it was like that before. I'm also dyslexic, or neurospicy, as my good friend would say. This is something else which a few years ago people weren't really comfortable talking about. And I just want to celebrate that with you. I don't really have a follow-up question there. I just think that's wonderful.
No, I'm with you. I want to celebrate that, Bill. I love that. And in fact, I've tried to insert into my conversations like, oh yeah, and I spoke to my therapist about this. And I think particularly being a Brit who felt like that was something that we couldn't talk about, maybe more in our youth, less so now, thankfully, it's just such a marked difference in the kind of general dialogue that we have.
And long may it continue. One more question for you before we wrap up for today, and that is, how can our listeners connect with you? So is that LinkedIn? Is that email address? Are you super cool and all over TikTok and Instagram and places? And of course, how can they learn more about all the things happening over at Community Savings Credit Union?
Thanks for asking, Bill. I'm certainly not cool, so I'm not on TikTok. I am on Instagram. LinkedIn is the best way to contact me. I'd love anyone to connect, even if it's just to talk about some of these issues. If you want to talk to me about, exciting ideas on what you've been able to do, actually, that it's just made me think we actually brought in first line responders to do some empathetic listening training. So that's got a really lovely link to some of the trauma-informed care practices that I think could be really exciting in the workplace. So yeah, get in touch with me. I'd love to hear about your weird and wonderful ideas. I think, boldness is the way forward when it comes to HR practices. So a good element of neurospicy ideas, send them my way, and pragmatic output. So yeah, I'd love to hear from you. You can email me at kironson@comsavings.com, or LinkedIn is a great place to contact me.
Excellent. There you go, listeners. So I think what Kirsten just did there was she invited you to connect with her and to send her weird and wonderful messages, I think is what she said. So good luck with that, Kirsten. And that just
I'll
leaves
let
me
you
to
know
say,
how that does sound.
yeah, let me know how that goes. That just leaves me to say for today, thank you very much for being my guest.
Thank you very much for having me, Bill. It's a pleasure.
And listeners, as always, until next time, happy working.
Thanks for listening to the HR Chat Show. If you enjoyed this episode, why not subscribe and listen to some of the hundreds of episodes published by HR Gazette? And remember, for what's new in the world of work, subscribe to the show, follow us on social media, and visit hrgazette.com.